Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick. We're back for part two of the review of the Ravens against the Eagles defense in the first preseason game. And, great game for the Ravens defense. I think in a lot of ways they made up for some errors that were made on special teams and on the offensive side of the ball, including that nasty pick six and some other inability to move the football. Here to talk to me about that and talk with me about some of the individual performances in this game is Alec Poulianis of One Winning Pod. Alec, how you doing?
Great, Ken. I'm excited to talk about these players directly. I felt we were teasing this part of the episode earlier on when talking about the overall game, but excited to break it down a little bit further.
Yeah, well, let's get into that with some talk about players. And I like to do this by position group, and kind of as we do during the regular season when we talk about individual players. Guest goes first. Please talk about who you'd like to start with, and we'll have a little bit back and forth about them, and then I'll pick another player in the same position group. We'll start with the interior defensive line.
Sure. I want to talk about Blackson. I was really interested to see what he would contribute coming in as a free agent signing. And, I thought he actually played pretty well. When I saw him go out there, it was one of those kind of players like I mentioned earlier in the show or in the episode one of, I see him go out there. Okay, I want to pay attention to him on this play. That's going to be where I start my focus. And I thought that he played pretty well. He didn't, get out of position too often, and he seemed reasonable against the quality of competition he was going against. And I think he's interesting to me because obviously we saw. Oh goodness! Now Keith Urban. I was like, who am I thinking in my head? Keith Urban.
Brent Urban.
There you go. Brent Urban. So clearly I was struggling to remember the name.
That would be a real depth problem for this team. If Keith Urban
That's right. So Brent Urban, I think they're kind of going to be competing for each other as that last spot. Which veteran? I'm not sure about the contract structure. We know that Urban has always been a favorable cut candidate just to sneak somebody by. I don't know if Blackson's contract is the same way. I believe it is. So we'll see who wins out that battle, but I thought he did all right.
So I have Blackson for a pair of pressures. One came quarter one, 907, the other quarter two, 1328. If you're one of those guys who just has to go back and look and check on my pressures. He had an assist on a defensive win for his only tackle. He only played 21 snaps. So that is not bad production from that period of time. By the way, Blackson does not have any guaranteed money on his contract, as far as I can tell from OTC. So the Ravens are free to use him as a variable roster size player as well as Urban. They could cut them both if they wanted to. Mm-hmm. But I would agree. And Blackson, I give out a change in expectations grade for every player in my article. And if you look at that, has a lot of detail on the individual plays they made and whatnot. I would encourage people to go out there and take a read. It doesn't take too long to read, although it's a heavier read in terms of some of the notational information that's there. But Blackson got a +1 from me. And that means that I think he's in a better position than I thought he was in before. That's all that means, that +1. Don't ascribe too much value to it. But to me, he moved up a little bit in terms of his likelihood of impacting the 2023 Ravens. And where I thought the chance there's probably going to have to be a breakdown in depth before he would get a spot. I think the Ravens may have found another player from a Chicago Bears background who might have found how that player would look better within the Ravens scheme than he has played previously in Chicago, which is not very well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously when they picked him up, they probably saw something in him they liked, and I was keen to see what he would do for our defense. And like you said, they could cut both of them. I wouldn't be shocked if they did, if they need the flexibility. We'll see who all they're trying to sneak. And yeah, very reasonable. He'll have my attention in week 2.
Yeah, they've got a bunch of guys on the roster. Basically, the magic formula is this: the secret to building an expanded 58-man roster instead of a 53. The secret is find the 5 guys who have 5+ years of experience, a vet minimum contract, and not a whole lot of guaranteed money. You can cut all 5 of them, probably sign them back, because if you got them at that kind of market price, there's probably not some kind of supermarket for them that's developed. So you're probably not going to lose them. And if they've made other commitments around town and whatnot, they've already rented their house and whatnot, there's a disincentive. The market frictions are actually significant for a guy who's making $1 million a year to not go to another city after they've got their kids. I already got a Maryland driver's license would be enough for some people, but for other people, it's like, I put my kids in this school. I think they've got a chance to succeed there. The wife's tugging them that, I'm already happy here. Don't move me. Then they might hang around, but anyway, frictions are helpful on a vet min contract basis, and you usually get to keep those people, even though you kind of use them to play this game. And we see the Ravens have not always got those people back on the roster right away. Sometimes they take 2 or 3 weeks to get them back on the roster because they have to kind of get some people onto injury status, but also they have to kind of wait for depth to break down somewhere else for them to get the players back. But they just have an understanding they're really part of the extended roster anyway.
Right. And then there's the extra gamesmanship. I think it's after week 2 where you sign the guy, and then it's a week by week contract. So then they can save some cap that way too. So definitely something to keep an eye on, particularly with these players like you mentioned.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to come up with another player. And for me, he was absolutely the most dominant player in this game, and that was Travis Jones. And what I mean is physically dominant here. Now, Worley was the grand wizard. That's a bad term. I don't want to use that. He was the Ed Reed of this game relative to the rest of the players. He was like, Ed Reed playing in a street ball league or something, where he was there to take the ball away at any time. But Travis Jones, the Eagles could not match up with him in any way one-on-one. The only times they beat him were in 2 different ways I want to get to. But he had pressure events. He had a couple different times where he got easy compression pressure. Opita, the right guard, could not block him straight up. Reed, the center, could not block him straight up. He beat Steen, who was the right guard, for fast pressure. When he was double teamed on one run play, Johnson and Sills were actually able to move him on one play. That allowed an RM4. That was, the big play that he allowed out of this. It's always going to be a little bit more difficult, and this was kind of his kryptonite in college, that he was double teamed fairly effectively when he was at UConn, and pretty much every other team knew that he was UConn's big player. Mm-hmm. So it was somebody they want to go after, but incredibly disruptive, powerful presence in the middle of this line. And we talked about it a little in the first episode. He looks to me like his hand fighting is at a completely different level. He's got violent, powerful arms, and he really uses them effectively, particularly with that rip move.
That I definitely agree with. I did notice, more active hands just in general for the pass rushers and defensive line. And I think the cool thing about Travis Jones, in college, they double team him. Okay, fair enough. But in the pros, you start double teaming Jones, and that really opens up everybody else. Fine. Somebody's going to get double teamed. That's kind of the way the math works if you're doing a 4-man rush. And I think he's going to be strong enough to hold his own in those positions and maybe even, break it occasionally. So I was really excited from his performance in this game.
I'm the good news or the bad news from here? Which do we want to start with?
Give me the good news first.
Okay, we'll go the good news first. You're a good news first guy. That's a sign of weakness. Well, but anyway, good news first. Yeah, well, I think so.
I was just quoting a song.
I
was just quoting a song. That's the only reason I said it.
All right, that's okay. So the Eagles' lone touchdown drive. If you look at the last 3 plays, the Eagles actually finally did develop a strategy to handle Travis Jones, and the strategy was let him over penetrate and then block him positionally. So on 2 of those plays, and if you look at this, it's Q2501 and Q2356. The first play, Q2501, they got a first down close to the goal line. Then they didn't quite get in, and then they scored the touchdown on the following play. And the first and the third play there, both times, Jones had a one matchup, penetrated way into the backfield, but actually also penetrated himself out of the play. And that actually opened up the middle of the field. Very interesting to watch the Eagles adapt on the fly to this, by the way. I don't doubt that this would be something you'd be able to deal with, if you're a defensive coordinator, you see one guy beating you as badly as Jones was beating the Eagles in this game, you definitely would try and figure out some way to address his penetration. But for the Eagles to show this to the Ravens in a preseason game they did the Ravens a big favor, because now they'll go right back to the drawing board with Jones starting this week, starting at these joint practices, and tell him, control your aggression. Look, it's great that you're getting into the backfield, but let's think about this logically. That man opposite you, his job is to block you one-on-one and see if he can take you out of that play. If you do the job for him and are way in the backfield and make it easy then for him to just, kind of bump you a little bit, so it's too hard for you to get back in the play at that point, you've done the job for him. That's exactly what he was supposed to do, is neutralize you in a one-on-one matchup. And then you failed to deny that player space, to deny the runner space, to bifurcate the backfield the way it is by over-penetrating. So they're going to get right back to him this week. They're going to talk to him, I'm sure, about that. And I'm going to look forward to joint practices and see if we see any of these over penetrations from Jones this week. But he'll be one of the really exciting players to watch. There's no indication to me that Travis Jones is not strong enough to pull that versus any player at all in this league one-on-one. I don't think there's a lineman in this league. You could maybe point to a Quentin Nelson or something. Quentin Nelson's more of a finesse player than a pure power player. But the interior offensive linemen in this league just aren't so massively powerful that they're able to handle a player like Travis Jones. They try and have feet, they try and move. Travis Jones is just way too quick and too powerful with his arms for the typical interior offensive lineman to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like you said, to me, preseason is an opportunity. This is why I'm so glad starters don't play. It's not because starters, there's a whole debate about, getting up the game speed and all that. But the real thing is I want these younger players to get these reps and learn ways that they can improve, and then be able to learn more about your roster on this back end that you don't get as many snaps during the season. Mm-hmm. Their time will come, the starters, in week 1, week 2, week 3. There's plenty of season for us to figure it out. They're going to be too good against the level of competition, unless everyone was playing their starters, to really truly get this idea. But with guys like Jones, you're going to be able to learn this. And like you said, see in practice how he responds. I think that this is a coachable moment. I always love this, when you can just coach a problem away as far as technique, more so than just physical limitations. This is the exact place you want to be in with a player in their second year. And Jones is really just starting to prove to everyone that he was a great pick in the 3rd round. I remember on draft night
how excited we were.
Yeah, we were like, oh, it's clear who we should be picking. He was on Jason's big board, I think in the top 30. I think it was number 29, if I recall correctly. It was a slam dunk pick in I think number 75 or 76 or something. Yep. So it was an absolute value, and he's shown it. I think if he was selected in the early 2nd round by a team performing like this, people would be pretty excited.
Yeah, got a trial by fire last year with 30% of the snaps played, largely because of the injury to Pierce. So he ended up being the primary nose, and he did a good job at that. But this year, boy, you look at this game. I asked the question this last week in camp, maybe it was 10 days ago by now, but of Weaver, is a 1-3 of Pierce and Jones a realistic possibility? Given past things we've seen from the Ravens, including Brandon Williams and Pierce playing together in Pierce's rookie year. And he said, I definitely wouldn't rule out that combination. I look at this game and see what Jones did in the one-on-one matchup. If I'm McDonald, I'm scheming every freaking time I get a chance to get Jones a one-on-one matchup. Anytime I can make it happen. If I can make it happen by stunt, if I can make it happen by whatever it takes, by the players on the field, by using that 1-3 combination I mentioned. I'm doing whatever I have to do to try and get Jones matched up single. You can blitz to get it too, is another thing. You can force a peel off from one of 2 guys that's blocking Jones, even if he is double teamed on a pass play, even if they get there the way they want right at the start. And it could get ugly pretty quick, I think, for opposing teams that are constantly matched up one-on-one with him. I'm sure the Eagles fans would say, boy, those second-string linemen of ours aren't very good. And they're probably right, but Jones outplayed them by so much. They didn't belong on the same field with him. And I think he's going to have a fairly easy time against other interior offensive linemen in this league.
Yeah, definitely excited for week one and his contributions there, but definitely on the right track. And like we said, great learning moment for where he did fail and something that can be fixed.
Who's your next guy you'd like to talk about?
Let's see. On the defensive line, I probably go with Bots.
Okay.
To me, he didn't do much. I see in your article you had him as a 0. For me, it'd be a -1. I think the reason I would say it's a -1, and maybe this is, taking your scoring system the wrong way, is I think he was outplayed. And I think in a couple other places, you kind of mentioned from a lack of playing from a player that they lost position. I feel like Bots kind of lost position for that reason. I felt as though the contributions we saw from Blackson and Urban were high enough that it'd be difficult for him to find a spot. Now, what he's probably going for anyways is a practice squad, against Nichols.
Mm-hmm.
And in that competition, both of those players I felt as though didn't do too much. So I guess in a way he has a redraw, another opportunity in week 2 and week 3 of the preseason to make an opportunity and a splash. But I thought this game he didn't really move the needle much.
It's an interesting player to talk about. And I'm going to toss Kaim Caesar in the same group as him. And one of the things is if you go to camp, and this is open information because anybody who's been there as a fan has seen this, those guys don't practice special teams. They're not on special teams units. So the two of them are always out there in the defensive line area, hitting the dummies, maybe practicing some hand fighting against each other sometimes.
Yeah.
Talking to the coaches there, but they don't have a lot to do in terms of a special teams role. And you wouldn't expect that. But I thought Bots was decent in this game, had a bull rush pressure. And that's a Q3 9 minutes. He did a nice job in pursuit, which is something I always like to see from a lineman. Are they making good pursuit to the sideline? He had a good job to knock Book out. He didn't actually knock Book out. He more directed Book out of bounds because Book didn't want to take the hit for a gain of just 2. The play was almost like a sack +2, honestly, for what it is. That's the way I kind of think of it. But it was that was a good play. Played 25 snaps. That's a little bit of something. Kaim Caesar played 22 snaps. He had less that I noted in this game. In fact, I only noted one thing, and that was that he stood up against a double team. And sometimes that's enough. I mean, he's a bigger guy. The Ravens may need another bigger guy, a nose tackle size player at some point this season. And I think Caesar and Bots are both in good shape to make the practice squad. And they may be probably Caesar even more so than Bots because Caesar is the larger body type that oftentimes you just have to have. I think it's more likely that Caesar would get poached off the Ravens practice squad. But as we know, Ravens practice squad, if you want a defensive lineman, that's where you go.
Indeed. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Didn't Nichols get poached at one point? Now he's back? Or am I making that up?
I don't know, honestly. It's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, but anyways, they're definitely always getting looked at. I think we lost somebody last year for sure, but anyhow, definitely know how to make them. and that's actually one of the things I think is a nice feature of the Ravens from a roster building perspective is we've been very competent over the years of finding good defensive tackle depth, late and undrafted that contribute and that helps them not have to necessarily draft that player in the 6th round, know, and that's valuable when you can take another swing at a cornerback or whatever.
You mentioned Rashad Nichols in there. Another guy, very odd game, because if you asked me how many snaps he played, I never would have guessed 43.
Yeah.
Never would have guessed that high. But he played as much as pretty much anybody on the defensive line, I think. And he did not make my notes even once. Now, let me start by saying this is we take all of our notes initially from the TV feed, from the broadcast feed directly. So the thing I get to see every single play is what's happening with the defensive line, who's getting pushed around, who's denying space effectively. And in Nichols' case, it's shocking to me that there wasn't a note to be had on a player like that over the course of 43 snaps. But that's the way it played out. And meanwhile, the same setup, 29 snaps, so 2/3 as many snaps for Jones. He's got 10 notes. Now he created all kinds of pressure on his. He moved his guys around like they were rag dolls. He was completely overpowering them. Rayshad Nichols, that wasn't the case, but you would think on other run plays that there would be negative notes on Nichols, and that wasn't the case either. It just was kind of invisible for this game, and that's not necessarily a terrible thing. Against a team that might have had some success pushing him around. They didn't, I wasn't noticing that happening a lot.
Yeah, just check the transaction report. We never lost him. So yeah, he was waived and then re-signed to the practice squad. So maybe that's what I was thinking of. But anyhow, yeah, he's always been a Raven.
So Broderick Washington didn't play. Justin Madubuike didn't play. Michael Pierce didn't play. Thank goodness, because you wouldn't want any of those guys going down. Brent Urban played, and he actually made a play or two in this game. Had a pass defense. It was a kind of a typical gut pressure on his guy. Nice leverage generated. Got some push on him, then got his hand up at exactly the right time. Got the pass defense. Had a nice, impressive shed of the tight end Stoll, where he tackled Swift for a 2-yard gain. Urban is a professional run defender in a lot of ways. He gets his arm up. That's his primary weapon in terms of how he can help you on early down pass defense. But what he does very well is deny space by maintaining position well. Some people call it a 2-gap player, but it's more nuanced than that. He's not just looking to go either way. The guy knows how to keep his arm free on whichever side it was, and he did on the play where he made the tackle. He's a very good guy to have around when you think, first of all, when you think the other team's going to be running the football. It's extremely valuable. When they have a particularly potent running attack, like playing the Tennessee Titans in London, they're going to want to have Brent Urban on the field a fair amount of the time. But anyway, I thought it was nice for him to get 19 snaps in this one. I think he was off the field by halftime. Yeah, near the end of the first half is when I have he left the field. And a good performance for him. Interesting, him and Blackson both had a plus outing. Neither of them is guaranteed a roster spot. Now I think both of them improved their chances to get one, even though in some sense they're competing against each other.
Now, does Blackson, in your mind, have the opportunity to play a 5-tech? Do you think he would be like a 1-for-1? Because that's something that Urban, we know, provides.
Right. The size that Urban gives you can't replace otherwise. Mm-hmm. So I think you start with that. I'm trying to look up the height and weight. Now I got my roster here. Let's see if I can look up the weight for Blackson. Yeah, Blackson is 6'4", 305. So he's a little bit good. It's good height. Don't get me wrong. So there's a lot of things he can do to help you with that. But Urban at 6'7" can do more. Urban's a little bit of a leaner player, but I think still very, very effective at denying space. I think of Blackson as probably a little bit more of a penetrator than Urban, and at 305 and his height, I think even more as a 3-tech. But I mean, the 5-tech role is it's not enough of a position by itself. So if you're 5, you have to also be able to play 3. You can get away with just being a 3. So in the case of with the Ravens having already Broderick Washington as probably their top 5-tech, who is absolutely also a 3. Then their second 5-tech is probably Urban at this point. Mm-hmm. And then that leaves Blackson to try and, probably be available when need arises. And if I still had to guess right now, I think including special teams presence and whatnot, Urban gives you more. And I think they'll stick with Urban, and Blackson will be their top practice squad guy.
That's my thought as well. I think Urban definitely has the advantage right now. And I also want to just point out, I noticed that he was one of the captains they brought out for the coin flip. Mm-hmm. And he looks so happy to be there. I thought that was a good nod. Other players were Seymour and then Prochet and Duvernay. So anyhow, but I definitely think Urban's probably, he's been here before multiple times. So I do think he has the inside track.
Yeah, completely understands the roster game that the Ravens may well play with him. Mm-hmm. And, he said directly on our show that that's something he completely understands. He just thinks it's smart general managing. So you have players that just get that, they get what the advantage is to the organization and they don't mind it. That's the guy you want on your as your extra vet min guys. I mean, they have an additional roster flexibility value that I think you should not understate the value of. I think it has real value that those players are able and willing to do that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on to outside linebacker. A lot of guys to talk about here. Definitely some interesting players, but who stood out to you?
Definitely want to talk about the local kid, Ham. So Malik came in, and I remember being like, "Oh, another Malik," but he and then with an H. Anyhow, Malik, I thought he played quite well. He was able to, win pass rush snaps and just get a lot of pressure. Honestly, he set the edge decently, and I thought he played really well. He's definitely a guy that stood out to me that hadn't stood out so far in the preseason at the practices I had gone to. It just wasn't a guy I had noticed, but definitely popped off the field during this game.
Yeah, terrific game for Malik and really showed out. And one of the things I have to be a little bit concerned about is that he was doing it mostly against one player, and that's the right tackle Okorafor, who he was beating a variety of ways, but he was very effective against him in particular. So he's kind of his daddy in this game. But it's not like Pierce where they couldn't put anybody up, and they tried. And they had Pierce lined up in various spots where he was going against different linemen. None of them could stand up one-on-one to him. Ham, it was basically the right tackle Okorafor he was beating. He beat him for Bull then shed for a quarterback hit. He beat him inside. That spin move he put on Okorafor at Q3-7-11. If you didn't notice it during the game, do yourself a favor and go back and watch it. It's mesmerizing. It's like watching Mullins catch from today. If you watch it one time, you probably want to watch it 6 times. It's just one of those outstanding spin moves for that fast S-6. He set the edge well. He had pressures. I had him, and he had a pass defense as well. So I had him with a sack, a quarterback hit, a pressure that resulted in a PD, and another pressure that it ended up being a run play, so I wouldn't chart it that way. So I had him as 1-1 and 1 on the pressures. I'm actually interested to know how PFF scored it on that for the day, but I know they thought Ham was pretty good. Yeah, they had him for 1-1 and 1 also. So good day for Malik, and definitely a candidate for the backup Sam role. One thing they have to do is have him take some coverage snaps. So he doesn't have to play against the next highest unit. He just has to play some coverage snaps this next week in game 2, probably in the joint practices, to try and get a feel for whether or not this guy could play a little Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel as though his ceiling play is not to make the roster, just because of the other signings that they're hoping to do. And granted, if they don't make a signing, then there seems like there's a slot. But if they do make a signing, I do anticipate him being a priority practice squad pickup. But I guess maybe it comes down to Bowser's health.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, first of all, they apparently have some timeline on Bowser. At least that's what Harbaugh said. He wouldn't tell you what it was, but he said it wasn't unreasonable kind of thing. I don't know what that means. That means just in half the season? Is he back in December? What does it mean that it's not an unreasonable time? The only thing I did see, I saw the video of him walking into the practice facility. That's the only time I've seen him so far during this camp process, and it did not look good. He had his leg wrapped, walking with a noticeable limp, and boy, it sure didn't look like he was going to be back next week or anything, or maybe next month. So they're going to need somebody else. So I think there's room for them, in my opinion, to sign somebody and also keep somebody.
Mm-hmm. So absolutely, yeah. If he's going to be IR'd, then yeah, definitely.
Well, if Bowser's going to be IR, but
yeah.
The more likely thing is that and IR can mean 2 things. You could have a season-ending IR if he's before.
Not that one.
Not that one.
Yeah. So you use an Urban to get him one day, and then
he's already on PUP, so they don't have to actually. Or no, actually, he's on NFI, isn't he? So I'm not sure what the impact of that is.
Yeah, that's true, right? Is
I'm not sure what the rules are. He may be able to come back anytime. And I think, wasn't that what happened with Ajabo last year? He was on NFI and then came back.
Yeah.
So I think they probably have the right to keep him around and available, even though they have to return him at some point during the season. But to me, Kyle Van Noy is still the guy who makes sense for this Ravens team. I think they're probably, if I had to guess, they're eventually going to get him. And he makes the most sense to keep their pass rush flexibility where they like it, where they have a guy who can drop off the end of the line of scrimmage, give you something in coverage. He's not Tyus Bowser, but he's been a pretty damn good coverage player. I want to say it's been over 1,200, might be 1,400 career coverage snaps that he's had. So he's a vet. He knows how to take that role. And I don't think he'll disappoint you in terms of reading the cornerback, in terms of figuring out where anticipating the flat route before it happens, anticipating the screen pass before it happens. I don't think he's going to let you down in that way. He might not be the pass rusher you want, but that's why you don't need all of that from him. And I think he said something like 20 sacks over the last 4 years too. So it's like he hasn't been bad in that area. It's just he hasn't, not necessarily great for an edge. Sure.
Well, I mean, given what his role would be on this team, assuming Bowser has some bill of health for, let's say, half a season, that's definitely reasonable to come in. And I think that's a great value add to the roster.
Well, one of the questions would be, would you rather have Ham in there as a backup Sam linebacker? And you've also got to consider the fact that Ham is a rookie. So you get 4 years of sand in the hourglass that hopefully will turn into gold dust at some point. Okay. Yeah. But if you do have Ham on the roster, then can he possibly give you more at outside linebacker on early downs as a Sam than what Malik Harrison could do? Because Malik Harrison has done some fine things. He's beefed up this offseason to 259 pounds, by the way. I don't know if you guys saw that, but that's an unbelievable weight for an inside linebacker in the NFL these days. No one weighs that much.
Yeah, he's a big boy.
Yeah. And he's done it, to no doubt about, to play edge. So the question is, that's really a run setting edge weight. Did he bulk up just to do that role? Or is he, hoping that he can play a little more Sam linebacker this season? And would Malik Ham be the right guy on early downs instead of him? And then you keep Malik available, obviously, for all the other things Malik can do for you, which is largely to provide you needed depth if anything goes wrong with your depth at either the inside linebacker or outside linebacker position, in addition to all the special teams value it gives you.
Right. Yeah. So I guess you're asking, do I feel like Ham's a better rusher at this point? For those downs, and I would say yes. So that's a good point about Harrison's value as an option at the Sam, but I do think Ham is like you said, he has those 4 years where Harrison has 0, and this is his last year, so definitely could see Ham being sneaking in there.
Yeah. All right, other outside linebackers. I've got one more I want to talk. You picked Ham, right? I
picked Ham. Guy? Yeah, so right. Go for it.
Let's talk about Kelly Sanders a little bit, because he made my notes a number of times in this game. Yes. And I thought he was the one outside linebacker who showed a little bit more against the run than the other guys. Mm-hmm. So I have a couple good edge setting notes. Twice he got a free run into the backfield. One time he ran there's a blocking error of some sort where he took down Sermon for a run left for -7. I can't diagnose it exactly, but the left B gap was wide open and he was on the line of scrimmage. So there's no reason for him not to get blocked on a play like that. And yet all of a sudden he's in the backfield, takes down Sermon for -7. He did lose containment and then missed a sack for -2 on a McKee RR7. So that was a play where, it was an ankle tackle, and that it could be a tough missed tackle when it's graded that way. But in my opinion, he kind of lost that containment, so he kind of richly deserved that one. So that was unfortunate. But otherwise, I thought he did a pretty good job. He was one of the guys who rushed off Washington's missed sack, which ended up becoming a sack 0 for Worley. That was a drive-ending play. I think it wasn't a drive-ending play. Actually, I think that was 3rd and 4. Took it to 4th and 4. But anyway, that play, he pursued Book all the way to the sidelines. There were several people doing it, but he was part of the posse that was running him down for
Yeah.
Worley to get the actually Worley just touched him down, but he was menacing enough that he had to slide down.
Yeah.
And then on that 4th and 4 play, he came off the offensive right side and got that drive-in quarterback hit as Book threw the pass as high and complete. Worley was standing right on top of the guy. I mean, again, Worley had diagnosed the play completely among these, 7th graders or whatever, what they looked like that they were playing with. So it was very. But I thought Sanders did a really good job, and of the Ravens outside linebackers, I thought his edge setting was some of the best.
That would be my note as well. Kind of keep it relatively short with him, is that he set the edge effectively when others didn't. And that was, something we complained about Jabo. And I think, Sanders was kind of the mirror there. So definitely a good game for him. We said the same thing actually about Tavius Robinson as well. So I definitely think Sanders had an all right game. Good performance for him.
All right. Who else? We got the outside linebacker? You got any notes on Jeremiah Moon or anybody else in this game?
No, I think I wanted to talk about it too much.
Okay. Yeah.
We talked about Tavius a little bit, but that was about it.
Oh, sure. Let's do that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, what I had on Tavius was that he was struggling to set the edge. And I noted that at camp as well. So it's one of those things, I guess. I always don't know what I'm supposed to say, so I kind of keep it to myself. But I noticed that he had some work to do there during camp and kind of continued through this preseason game. So like you said, it kind of makes him more of a situational pass rusher at this point, which I wasn't too thrilled with anything I saw there either. So I think he's going to be more of a developmental player, but hope to see some growth throughout the preseason.
Yeah, he's an interesting player because it's not clear that he gets activated on game day.
Yeah.
First of all, he'd be the 3rd string rush linebacker for this Ravens team. So his value will come largely as a situational pass rusher, and it has to come with an ability to kick inside. I don't think you otherwise derive the value from who he is if you don't have that in mind as a package. And the Ravens may or may not actually want to do that. I mean, hey, if Travis Jones is as dominant as he looked, then I could really see a time this season where the Ravens say, you know what, we don't have a great number of outside linebackers that we want to have in there anyway, but Ajabo and Owe are enough. We want Matabike and Jones to be on the field on these pass rush situations, and otherwise have our standard 2 inside linebackers. You blitz off the slot some, you blitz from safety, and there's multiple ways to get to the quarterback, but we don't, where we normally have been a 1 defensive lineman team now for quite a while, very rarely having 2 defensive linemen on the field on pass rush situations. This is maybe a version of the Ravens that has enough interior rush to consider doing it with 2 guys.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there.
All right. Yeah. Same things about Robinson, I would say too. Anybody else I need to say anything about? I don't think so. Let's move on. We're kind of dogging it a little bit here, though I enjoy these discussions with you always, Alec. Let's move on to the inside linebacker position and talk about the guys who played there.
All right. I think we have to start off then with the other Malik Harrison. I noted here that he was wearing the green dot for 3 quarters.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know who was wearing the green dot, so I appreciate that note. But what I did notice is that, like you said, like block out the sun. He was there for most of the game, played pretty well. Definitely saw him show up in a few key plays. Although he unfortunately did fall for some misdirection. That 4th and 1 play, he was in the position to stop Mariota, but then he bit. And then that allowed a continuation of the drive. So I definitely was hoping that, for a little bit better there in those kind of key positions, but he definitely played well, and he was able to register a sack and break up other run plays.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say about Malik because most of it's out there. Malik was one of the stars of the game by everybody's estimation, including the Ravens themselves, who put him up for an interview after the game along with Worley. I don't know how they could have avoided Worley, but with Harrison, they certainly put him up there. They could have put Travis Jones up there. I think people would have been happy to hear from him about the day he had, but they didn't do that. They used Harrison. He was out there for 58 snaps. The play that was most impressive to me of his was a Q2 615. There was a pulling center on the play, Reed, and he stood up to him and shed him aside. And I saw that and I think, boy, that's just something we never, ever see from Patrick Queen. And it doesn't even have to be a puller where there's a full head of steam developing before he gets the block. It's a matter of, basically any lineman who makes it to level 2 is a difficult shed for Patrick Queen and has been over the years. Queen really depends on quickness to avoid getting blocked. If he gets, hands get on him, and I'm not saying that's not true of a lot of inside linebackers in this league, that a bigger player gets your hands on him, you have trouble dealing with that. But Harrison just a really fine block shedder, and that was a good instance of it if you look at that particular play. And the pass rush, he looked quick getting in, was much too quick for the left tackle Steen when he recorded his S-9. That was a blitz through the left B gap where Steen had to react inside. He was much too slow for what Harrison could present. Not going to say that all left tackles in the league wouldn't be quick enough, but that would have been a tough schematic chore for most left tackles, and he did a good job getting there. I thought in general, really good snap. Made my notes a number of times. He's in my star treatment in my article of that has 6 individual.
Film Study is brought to you by Factor. With the busy fall season just around the corner, you might be looking for wholesome, convenient meals for those jam-packed days. Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, can help you fuel up fast with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, eat well, and stay on track with your healthy lifestyle. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes, so all you have to do is heat and enjoy. Then get back to crushing your goals. Refresh your healthy habits without missing a beat. And with Factor, you can rest assured you're making a sustainable choice. We offset 100% of our delivery emissions, source 100% renewable electricity for our production sites and offices, and feature sustainably sourced seafood in all of our meals. This August, get Factor and enjoy eating well without the hassle. Simply choose your meals and enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered to your door and ready in just 2 minutes. No prep, no mess. Head to factormeals.com/Ravens50 and use code Ravens50 to get that 50% off. That's code Ravens50 at factormeals.com/Ravens50 to get 50% off. Film Study is brought to you by GoPuff. GoPuff is a delivery app that offers super fast delivery of anything you need. Their simple-to-use app lets you order your favorite brands and products right to your door in 30 minutes or less. No middleman, no crazy fees, and no waiting around. GoPuff has literally everything you could ever want. Get snacks, drinks, groceries, alcohol, home essentials, and more delivered with a click of a button. For a limited time only, GoPuff is giving new customers $10 off their first 10 orders, plus a free 14-day trial of their exclusive membership program by using the code WELCOME1010. GoPuff's membership program gets you access to unlimited free deliveries with no service fees, extremely low pricing on over 150 everyday essentials like eggs, milk, Ben & Jerry's, and more, and insane weekly deals on the most coveted and in-demand brands and products. So download the GoPuff app or visit gopuff.com and use the code WELCOME1010 today.
Notes, good and bad, of what happened in the game. And to me, Malik was definitely a guy who was going to make the team. I think that not from this game, but also from what's happened in camp, he's improved his chances, but he also has some competition to deal with now with the other guy who really started in this game, which is Delshon Phillips.
Yeah, I agree. So right before you talk about Delshon, I'll just say that is kind of the cool advantage of Harrison gaining that extra weight, like you mentioned. Not only does that provide him flexibility to maybe play edge and a Sam role, but he also is able to get off a block and shed a little bit better than a guy like Queen, who's just a bullet. And like you said, uses his speed to get out of those situations.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Delshon Phillips also played right next to Malik Harrison on the weak side for 3 quarters. If you haven't heard it, and you've probably been in a cave if you haven't heard it now or not reading Ravens articles, Delshon Phillips is on one of the big heaters ever in terms of his camp play. He's made all sorts of plays, hands on the football, interceptions, punching the ball loose from Mason and some other players, but Mason a lot, it seems like. He's been a very effective player and really frustrating, I think, to the to the offense in terms of how he's been in the right play. Had 10 tackles in this game. That is a very rarely attained figure in the preseason. You usually have to have a game where one team runs a ton of snaps, and then if they do, it's usually a lot of passing snaps, so you won't make as many tackles. But Delshon Phillips with 10 tackles in this game is a remarkable total. Even more remarkable, 7 of those were defensive wins. So that means they didn't meet the minimum standard of percentage of the yardage needed, which is 45% on first down, 60% on second down, 100% on third down of the yardage needed for a first down. And that's a terrific game to have 7. Some people call them stops or stuffs or whatever you might call them to defensive wins to do that.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You have to be living under a rock. So I've heard the reports. I've seen some of it at camp, and it's continued in this game with Phillips producing at a high level. And listeners of our show will know I gave him a lot of crap for taking up a roster spot last year when I was itching to see more of a Jabo. I understand they play completely different roles and he had special teams, but I was just like, I wanted that pass rush juice, and more so than anything special teams. I was like, surely somebody else can contribute because he wasn't contributing on defense there. But I'll say he kind of proved me wrong. I had low expectations of him coming back this year, and he's been playing really well. And he's definitely in the driver's seat to take that position away from Welsh, who seemed to have the stronger hold of it last year.
I'm not sure that there's actually room for either of them, and we'll see. But Phillips would probably be the guy. I mean, if you think about the Ravens rush spot, the guy who missed the game, and we need to talk about him, is Trenton Simpson. And this is a big opportunity missed for Trenton Simpson to get live fire because there just isn't a lot of that. And I got to believe if he didn't play this game, there's a pretty good chance he's not going to. Well, okay, I'll say this. Maybe they wanted to make sure he rested up and was ready for 2 live practices plus a game against Washington because this is their biggest week of practice this week. They'll be padded twice. They'll have the game, of course, on Monday night, and this is a huge week for the Ravens and try to figure out their roster depth positions in particular. But Phillips, he doesn't play Sam like Malik, or he'd really be threatening Harrison's job. So I think, he's a guy really just a weak side linebacker at this point. And if that's the case, then obviously his chances to make the roster are a little bit more difficult because you got to figure Queen is there. You got to figure Simpson is there. And then roster spots tend to get very tight once you get above 4 inside linebackers and you figure Malik is your 3rd and Roquan, of course, is your 4th. You've got your slots filled. Now the Ravens have had 5 in recent years because they've done some other addressed special teams, and they've addressed outside linebacker from there. So they may carry 5. I don't see any way in hell they carry 6, and both of Welch and Phillips make it.
Agreed. Yeah, they're definitely. If one of them is going to make it, that's it. That's the upper max. Simpson, huge disappointment to be missing this game. I found out about his injury a little late. I think he got injured maybe about a week ago. And I found out maybe like 3 or 4 days after it had happened. I missed that note. And it was hugely disappointed because I was really looking forward. That was one of the number 1 players I wanted to watch because I know that in this particular limitations of personnel packages, maybe we wouldn't see it, what they might do in the regular season. But he's such an interesting piece to me. His size and speed is really rare. And I just was really curious what kind of player he'd be. And I really wanted to get snaps. Like you said, there's a lot of people in front of him, a lot of ways that he's not going to see the field unless injury occurs. So I really was disappointed. And I hope, I love the timeline. Like you said, hey, get healthy. You got a big week of practice with 2, practice with the Commanders and then the game. That'd be amazing, but I'm not optimistic. Unfortunately, I think he might miss all of that, and that'll be a huge loss for him in his first year of development.
Yeah. It might even mean, a guy like him, because they want to keep somebody else, starts the year on IR and ends up coming back after 4 weeks. The Ravens get an extra chance to practice with him. And that, I think there is a rule on how quickly they can come back to practice. And it might be as early as week 2 to come back in week 4 or come back in week 5. Yeah. But whenever they have the option to start practicing again with him, they might consider that a investment in depth at the position. Now, it's not the position I think they really need depth. They've got another Mike linebacker that probably, despite being good enough to be the backup for a lot of teams, and Josh Ross is not going to have a spot here. That's what it looks like to me right now. He came in, played 17 snaps. I played very well in the preseason last year. The clock did start running on him last year, so he's a second-year player now. So it means there's a little bit less value as a gamble to keep on somebody's roster. But if he goes to the practice squad, I think if somebody's going to get short-handed at inside linebacker, it wouldn't surprise me if Josh Ross is a guy who gets selected. Absolutely.
Yeah, he definitely showed out and similar. I wanted to see him play this game more than he did. Mm-hmm. We saw so much of Phillips and Harrison that he just didn't get the opportunity. And like I said, last year he was a big piece. Got injured, if I recall correctly, and wasn't really able to. Now, granted, he wasn't necessarily going to see the field anyways with how everything played out last year, but I think he was unavailable for some of it as well. But was hoping to see more of him. If they're trying to hide him, I don't think that's going to work. I think the word's already out on Ross, and we might lose him as early as his cut. He gets signed by another practice squad or a team that sees an opportunity with him.
Yeah, you're right. And that's the opportunity. Once he is cut, then he doesn't necessarily re-sign with your practice squad. The Patriots or somebody else may be in contact with him, and he'll be gone very quickly if that happens, even if he just believes there's a better opportunity somewhere else. And it's not unreasonable for Josh Ross to say, wow, this Baltimore lineup is pretty stacked at linebacker. And if I'm really waiting for Queen to leave next year to get an opportunity, he'd really have to be looking at the group and saying, there's a lot of coverage deficiency in this group that I think I can provide. Mm-hmm. And that might be true, but it's going to be, I think it's going to be harder for him to get on the field here. But anyway, I disappointment that he's not available. I mean, his situation is not nearly as dire as Welch's is. Welch, when he's cut at the end of the camp, you hope for the best for him. I think he may be able to find a special team spot as a backup inside linebacker somewhere in the league, but it's no slam dunk. So phone calls will have to be made. He'll have to find that good spot for him. And it may be that the Ravens practice squad is the best spot for him. So, we'll see how that plays out. Let's move on. We've spent some time on inside linebacker. Let's move on to cornerback, which obviously is one of the most difficult depth positions for this team. And one where, as we mentioned in the first half of the show, they didn't have 6 of their 13 guys ready to go in this game.
Correct. And, in a way, I feel like we may want to just talk about DBs because some of these guys are tweeners.
Let's do it.
But the one I wanted to start off with was Stevens. Very curious player. I remember the comments at the beginning of camp, he's going to be a safety now. We're going to focus on safety again. That lasted not very long. He's back at corner. I don't see him going back to safety with the play of other truer safeties. And he had an up and down game. He obviously had some really good plays to break up that touchdown opportunity and end the drive. Huge play. But he also saw him get picked on a little bit. Like that big reception for the Eagles that helped set up their touchdown. So up and down game for Stevens, more up than down, in my opinion. And just a guy you want to see a little bit more out of. Like I said, he showed a little bit of that dominance or that extra. He doesn't deserve to be out here anymore, but here he is. But I felt like he should, and the people I was watching the game with were saying it too. Like he should be absolutely dominating. It shouldn't be a question. And it felt like he should be at Worley level, given what we hope he would be at this point. And it's just a little bit of a disappointment. Obviously, has a couple more games to prove something. I don't think his roster spot's in question by any stretch of the imagination. He's absolutely necessary at this point. But you want to see him more because at the rate we're going, he's going to get playing time.
Oh, I mean, right now, I think he's the Ravens' number 3 corner.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's, he's number 2 without Yasin being available. But that's necessity is the mother of these kind of things. So we've heard a lot of crap in camp. You hear about how they're going to move players around, and then they unwind that pretty quickly. We heard about Monken not wanting to allow Lamar to wear a wristband That's been unwound now. So they're going back to the wristbands this week. So, it's just, Stevens, it just made too much sense for him to stay at corner. The Ravens safety depth, and particularly with the move of Worley, has just gotten better. They still have Geno Stone there. They have Worley. They, of course, have the two potential Pro Bowlers in Williams and Hamilton as the starters. So you have so much depth at that position. It's only natural that your fifth safety, if your fifth safety is a better outside corner than your third best there, you're going to make that switch.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they have. And I hope this is the last switch for Stevens' career. I hope that he gets some playing time this year. And when I say that, it doesn't have to be a ton. If he plays 150 to 200 snaps on the outside, I'll be thrilled, and really shows out like he can play. And that means Yasin and Humphrey are basically healthy. Mm-hmm. I think that'd be terrific. I think it could be more than that if they can't find a slot corner. The Ravens could be tempted to make any one of multiple moves, which I wouldn't be entirely happy with. One, moving Hamilton back to the slot. Number two, moving Humphrey into the slot. And either one of those might involve more playing time for Stevens potentially. He could get more time at safety potentially if Hamilton moves back to slot. He could get more time at on the outside, obviously more likely if Humphrey moves to slot.
Agreed. Yeah, interesting player. You don't see him much as a slot corner projection. I know some people in the community have discussed that, but I just don't see the change of direction necessary for that kind of player. He's always been a little bit more linear, stiffer athlete, which makes him a better candidate, I think, on the outside. So, yeah, definitely an interesting player and one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, also has the size and speed to play on the outside. Good natural boundary corner skills. I think he reduced some of his grabbiness from the early part of last year to the end of last year, which was good. So anyway, it was good to see him put a really nice game, and it's 58 snaps. It's a full game effectively on tape that he played as well as he did, and I'm very positive on this, and I think he will stick now at outside corner given how the Ravens are constituted this year. I don't think a change is coming for the rest of 2023.
Agreed.
All right, let's move on. Talk about how about our Darius Washington? There's a guy who I've kind of been wondering where he's at in camp because he just has not been playing with the ones for very much. But the last week or so, he did move up and play a fair amount with the ones. Now, some things happened. Mullet got hurt, and Pepe was in there for a while before him. And before that, I think they had Brandon Stevens to start camp was the slot corner that they were using with the ones. So they finally cleaned the slate on the rest of these guys. Stevens by moving to outside corner, Mullet with the injury, and Pepe with the injury. And now they have Ardarius Washington. And he turns in a pretty damn good game at a combination of slot corner and safety. And I thought he was one of the really nice, pleasant surprises about this game. The game was not perfect by any stretch. One of the things is, and I don't know if he was giving away something, which I can't really tell, or whether Mariota and McKee were just too good at it. But he rushed the quarterback a couple times, and Philadelphia had it sniffed out each time, and they threw the hot guy on his side, and they just had easy pitch and catch completions, which was unfortunate. I don't know if he gave something away. I really can't say that occurred, but it is unfortunate that Philadelphia is so keyed in on that.
Agreed. I definitely want to see this continue. It's like, okay, you did it once. That's great. You had some solid performances in the last couple of years coming in as a call-up, usually from the practice squad when depth was thin. And that's all great. But I need to see a little bit more consistency from him. Just another game at this level would be a perfect example of that. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I definitely want to keep seeing it from him because then, maybe you can say, okay, we feel decent enough about you as a slot. And keep Hamilton in the pure strong safety role. We'll see, but I'm not 100% sold that's going to be the case, but I would love to be wrong.
Yeah. Good. Lots of good things to do. I'm not really concerned about the missed sack that turned into a sack 0, but his missed sack minus 13. If you look out there, whether it's on PFF or other places, they probably charge him with a missed tackle on that play. I look at it as he delivered initial pressure despite failing to make the sack, and it ended up having a positive result coming out of that. And that's a problem with missed tackles and generally. general. Daryl Worley got a missed tackle on his sack minus 5 or 6 that he would have had when he had the sack, and it turned into a sack minus 21. So you can't get too concerned with missed tackles that retract running backs that get any kind of an angular turn to a running back that blows up the play, or even to a quarterback. And the ones you do get worried about is when you fall off Ben Roethlisberger and then he throws a 50-yard touchdown pass against you. But that didn't really happen in this game. The missed sack still ended up being good plays for the Ravens. All right, who do we want to talk about? Difficult game for Jordan Swan in this one. Gave up plays of 27 and 33 yards. I don't think he's in the Ravens' plans. And you're looking for guys who could give up their spot for some other players to get more playing time. I think Swan is one of them. He was in the game in the first half. And I think you have an opportunity to move a Kelly up on the totem pole, say, or a Mayfield, and see him more early in the game, see what he can do against some stiffer competition if the cornerback depth is still having a problem this next week.
Agreed. Swan has not impressed me at camp. I know that they're actually looking at Nigel Warrior to make a comeback. That's a fun name
really?
in the past. Yes.
Really? I did not know that.
Yeah, he worked out. And currently they have enough room on the roster, I believe, to just sign him. I think they're at 88 right now, so they could have 2 more. So they don't have to necessarily cut anybody, but if they do, I think it'll be Swan. He just hasn't been anything of note. I actually saw him getting worked out the last time I was at camp, so I don't know if he has like a little bit of a nagging injury potentially. That's not like he's not fully at 100%, but anyhow, not the best performance from Swan, and we'll see without Nigel Warrior. I was joking with the guys like, oh, our prayers have been answered. Nigel Warrior coming back.
Well, that was someone that a lot of people were sure we would lose if he went to the practice squad, and sure enough,
they
didn't trade him, right? They lost him.
They lost him to the Seahawks, and he actually played. So he's had an opportunity in the league. I mean, obviously he hasn't played at such a high level that he's been coveted, but maybe he'll be able to come back and mix things up at camp and maybe win a roster spot. We'll see.
I still have a couple guys to talk about, but do you have anyone else you want to bring up with your points?
Oh yeah, sure thing. Let's see here. Let's talk about Caillou Blue Kelly a little bit. We kind of talked about it in the first episode, but came in late, which was a huge disappointment. But when he did come in, I thought he had very sticky coverage. Saw good technique from him, and it just, he's such a mystery pick. We didn't quite understand it at draft day. We didn't understand it later. Even Harbaugh, when he talked about him once, almost seemed pleasantly surprised by his build and athleticism, where like it made me wonder if he even was on board with the pick. And I was just like, what a curious pick. They picked Pepe last year out of someone slamming the table. It seemed like a kind of similar thing with Caillou Blue Kelly, a slam on the table pick. I hope this one works out.
There's maybe 2 scouts or something have red starred him in Ravens lingo. I mean, It'd have to be something like that. There has to be something they like that we can't see, because his statistics at Stanford are terrible. I mean, they're awful in terms of what he did. He allowed over 8 yards per target in college, and that's not a draftable level for a college cornerback. So,
right.
Yeah, difficult, obviously, pick to understand. But he played both left corner and right corner. He's in there. I agree with you. I think he had fairly tight coverage when he was on the field. When Ham had that pass defense, he was a pass defense at the line of scrimmage, obviously for him, but he had very tight coverage of Cleveland, who was giving them a lot of trouble all day. Cleveland and Nada were the guys who were targeted for a lot of passes for Philadelphia in this game. He had tight coverage of Cleveland on that play. So it was a nice, it was a nice surprise, I thought, what they got out of him. And I think to give him any more discussion than that is probably more than he deserves on a show like this. We probably need to move on here. But anyway, he's a guy I wouldn't have any problem at all if they moved him up on the totem pole and he gets some snaps that Swan was getting in this last year. And they have the reasons. They have the reasons why Swan was their guy over Kelly. But maybe this game changes their mind a little bit, and they see him a little higher up. Yeah,
absolutely. Who's your next guy?
Next guy, Jeremy Lucien. Now, a guy who came in and played some corner, played some safety, and looked pretty damn good. And obviously, his biggest play was falling on the football that was knocked loose by Worley for that recovery. So that was really nice. But he also was involved in a play where I don't know how you pronounce his name. It was Hasselwood or Hazelwood, but whatever it is, I'm not going to keep track of the Eagles, non-roster making receivers at this point. But they had a drive-ending incomplete pass in the second quarter late that gave the Ravens their opportunity to get the football back and advance the ball to Tucker's 60-yard field goal. Well, anyway, that play, he and Hazelwood got their feet tangled up, and they the official felt the need to announce the reason why there was no flag over his microphone. By the way, there was no flag for a face mask on that play either, because no player touched the other player's face mask anywhere on the field. You don't need to announce. You don't need to announce all the crimes that did not occur, on a particular day. Usually, you throw the flag, have the perp walk, and that's pretty much it. Anyway, the Lucien had a nice play on that, and it's possible he did a Dennis Rodman. Is that reference too old for people? But Dennis Rodman?
No. I mean, not for me at least.
Okay, so he had some individual game. I want to say just between like under the basket to half court, he got his legs tangled up with the same player 3 straight times and fell down with him.
Oh wow, really?
And so I'm not just talking about Dennis Rodman, the player. I mean, people know him and they've seen him around on various things. And but this was Dennis Rodman in a game actually for the Bulls. He was outstanding defensive player, and he basically, what they said is he got at the player's head, but what he really did is he just tripped the guy 3 straight times, but he knew how to get away with it. And they're just backing up on the court and making it difficult for one of the good opponents to make it with him. And they did not call a foul on any of that. It was all incidental. It was a kind of an interesting thing. So to see Lucien get his feet tangled up always reminds me of that particular sequence from Rodman. By the way, I wonder if you look out there, Rodman YouTube Rodman feet tangled. I bet you find that series of plays.
Yeah, I'd love to check that out. I will say with them announcing that call, I feel like it was them reading the room. It was kind of a half Eagles game. We're close enough to Philadelphia. It's not that surprising. Lots of Eagles fans around me, at least. I don't know about you. And just like, all right, we understand that it's basically equal footing at this game a little bit, maybe like 70-30. So I'll let you know why I'm not throwing a flag on this play. But
right.
Not too much to add to Lucien. Interesting player. This is one of the first times I truly noticed him. Like I said, at camp, like I hadn't quite noticed him. Maybe I was focusing on other players at that point. But I did notice him in this game. Definitely a plus performance for him going forward. Don't see him making the team, but maybe making the practice squad. Right.
Now, he's a guy, he fell completely off everybody's radar because he's a 469 40 guy. So that's not good. He probably will have to play safety in the NFL to be effective. But we'll see. Maybe he's the player. In this game, he had a really nice run fit play as well. So I thought that was a positive as well. I got one other guy I want to bring up. That's Mayfield, Corey Mayfield. And Corey Mayfield was a draft pick of the Ravens, right? Didn't they get him with a 6 or something?
I don't think so. I think it was undrafted.
Undrafted. Okay, very good. All right. But anyway, a guy who got into the game late, and he had, I believe, 2 of the 9 interceptions the previous Saturday, a week ago. Seems like it was forever ago, but that Jackson, Huntley, and Johnson threw last week. So, a lot of poorly thrown flotation devices, but Mayfield had 2 of the interceptions, and maybe he gets some additional playing time out of that. I noted him twice for good coverage in this game. It wasn't enough for me to give him a +1 in this game because I don't really think he's moved the needle yet based on when he got into the game. But a guy I hope maybe could get a little bit earlier playing time in the next game, see a few more snaps, and for real see some reps this week in these 2 combined practices.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a weird spot we're in. You want a guy like Stevens to get more reps. It's just a guy that he needs them. He's such a new player to the position. But at the same time, what you got. He's going to be a contributor on this team this year. Maybe you just stop playing him and play a guy like Mayfield a little bit more. Just move it up the pecking order, up the totem pole, like you were saying earlier. I could totally see that. So we'll see going forward how they find these snaps. I think that is a challenge, frankly. Is how you divvy up these snaps in such a way where they can learn, but also maybe not get smoked. Because like I said, I think they do care about winning, and they don't want to get completely smoked by playing the sequence wrong of when they elevate somebody.
Yeah, I mean they have that, and I honestly I don't give a crap about losing the game relative to corner depth for the season. I mean I care a little bit about the preseason winning streak, but if they could get out of a single game with a guarantee of no injuries, I'd give up the streak in a heartbeat for just that.
Yeah,
for just one game of guaranteed no injuries. Okay, and JAD is another guy that, regardless of where he was this week, he presumably will be healthy at some time during the preseason. He wasn't last year, so maybe not. But he's going to have to see a little bit of playing time, I think, in the preseason at some point.
Good point.
So that'll create additional pressure on this. Mullet, when he comes back, is going to create additional pressure in terms of the snaps. But we'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about Kayvon Seymour here, who did take 58 of these snaps, and he looked pretty darn good, I thought.
Indeed, another captain of the game. Pass defense, end of the drive, drew an offensive pass interference. Great game. Also had that 4th and 1 conversion against him, which was unfortunate, but definitely, this is a player that I thought would make the team. He's just I think he's sneaky good. I don't think he's terrible. I think he holds his own, and that's what you're looking for these last corners on the team.
Yeah, and he got beat on the rub route you mentioned. So that was an interesting play. The Ravens really ought to pick something up from that and have some rub routes that are actually effective this year. It has not been part of the Roman offense. In fact, the last rub route that I can remember the Ravens running effectively was the Macklin touchdown in the opening game of Week 1, 2018. When they beat the Cincinnati 20-0, Macklin rubbed off on Watson, or Watson caused the defender to be rubbed away. In this case, it was one of the other receivers, but it was on the 4th and 1 play, which ended up going for a pass right for 17. It was Cleveland, I think, who rubbed him off. So anyway, it drew an OPI in the game. That was positive. Generally, it had a pass defense on the sideline that was legitimate. It wasn't a fake. It just had some generally positive play. Did allow some pitch and catch. The Ravens were playing fairly loose in this game in terms of allowing some of that, allowing some slants to beat them. And it's just the way it happens sometimes. There's no defense for the perfect pass is something you hear a lot, and particularly with Mariota in the game, but also with McKee, they had a pretty effective passer in there.
Yeah, definitely pay attention to Kayvon Seymour as a potential cut candidate as well. 30-year-old player, 1-year contract, no guaranteed money. So definitely could be a guy they cut and bring back, although might be playing with a little bit with fire with him. I don't think too much, but if a team is even worse off shape with their cornerback depth, it wouldn't shock me at all if they went his direction.
Somebody would have to buy him. And he's not the kind of guy you go out and say, hey, tell you what, come to Arizona instead. We've got an opening for you right away as the number. Let's say, if there's a team that needs him as the number 3 cornerback, first of all, they're going to get him if they have him, because Seymour is going to see the value in that opportunity. But if it's to be a number 4 or number 5 cornerback, somebody else, and they just want to buy him for $2 million, I don't think he necessarily even makes that move. It's the kind of thing you might value how you're valued on special teams here in Baltimore. You've got the survival value of being 5th cornerback / special teams ace that you can play for a couple of years. So anyway, it's if you're a special teams player, this is a hell of a place to be playing. Your contributions are valued. If you can play a little defense as well, or play wide receiver or running back like Hill does, you're valued.
Yep, absolutely. No, this is definitely a destination for many, I think, UDFAs for that exact reason.
All right. We got to talk about Worley before we're done here. That's he was the man in this game. Anything you have to say first? I
mean, shoot. that 23-yard sack was a lot of fun. Maybe it was 21, you said. 21-yard sack.
Yep.
Forced the fumble after the help from Welsh. We mentioned that earlier in the episode. And just the guy played all the snaps, just phenomenal player in this context. So And cool that he converted to safety. You know, we talk about that a lot. I feel like for the aging corner that's convert to safety. Well, here's an actual example of it that's kind of working out well. So, yeah, Worley, I thought he played really well. You know, obviously,
but he, in terms of leverage, this was just an extraordinary game. Worley not only contributed big plays, but he made his big plays in the highest leverage situation. So the last 6 notes on him, Q3 413 is 4th and 3. He and Phillips had a great back at coverage of Cleveland. McKee threw incomplete for Nada in the back of the end zone. That was with Stevens. But part of that was Worley and the coverage he had on that play. Then Q4 1141, he stripped Brooks, and that was a drive-ending play there. Always nice to do that whenever you can. Q4 840, 3rd and 8, blitzes off the slot for the S-21. That ends another drive. You're going to notice a ongoing sequence of this. Then on the 2-point attempt, he covered the running back Brooks. That's an undervalued part of this. It's kind of like Ray Lewis covering Frank Gore on 2nd or 3rd down, I forget which, of the stand against the 3rd down on the stand against the 49ers. But anyway, it was nice coverage. The ball was forced into the corner of the end zone into what he thought was single coverage, but Washington peeled off his own guy and made the pick. Then at 3rd and 4, he took down Book for the S0. That brought up 4th and 4. And then what do you know? He's right there covering Sermon on 4th and 4. Just an incredible streak of drive-ending, high-leverage plays. I have never seen it done before in a Ravens preseason game. The only time I can think of it happening in a regular season game that's even close was Levine's game at Pittsburgh in 2018, where as the dime back, he had 3 consecutive drive-ending plays in the 4th quarter. That's high leverage. But this, he basically was involved in 5 straight drives ending to end the game for the Ravens in one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, that was, you can see in your notes how he progressively became more and more dominant as the game kind of went on. And definitely, like you said, don't miss out on the fact that these are on high leverage plays, that he's finding a way to be a part of it. Maybe shame on the Eagles for going in his direction, or praise to Worley for being in the right place to break up a play, a good diagnosis of where the ball's going in his role as a safety. So yeah, great performance, clear MVP.
Yeah. I want to say this one more time. If you want to play a little game of which of these ones is not like the other, look at who was on the field with Worley at the end of the game. So the Eagles are trying to catch up. The guys on the field for the Ravens are Nichols, Botts, Caesar on the defensive line. They're the only 3 guys still playing anywhere on the defensive line these last several drives. Sanders, Ham at outside linebacker. You then have Ross and Welch at inside linebacker, and Kelly, Lucien, Swan, Mayfield, Ardarius Washington, all in and out in the defensive backfield. And then Daryl Worley. Which one of those is not like the other? The 8th-year player with 55 career starts, or any of these 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and Welch does happen to be a 4th-year player in the group, but it's mostly rookies. I mean, Nichols, Botts, Caesar, they're all R1. Sanders and Ham are both rookies. Ross is a 2nd-year player who's hardly played at all other than the preseason. Kelly is playing his first NFL game of any sort. Same with Lucien, Swan, and Mayfield. Ardarius Washington is a 3rd-year player, but Worley, he should tower over that in terms of his understanding, and opposing quarterbacks tend to be pretty bad at that point in a preseason game. They make mistakes, and Worley was there to take advantage of them when they did.
Right. I think if you take all the additional years of the other 10 guys on the field over a rookie, right, you get to Worley's experience. So
there you go.
And add on that he had 55 starts in the league. He didn't belong out there, but we were glad he was out there as the final hammer to secure the all too necessary 24th consecutive win.
Yes.
Which people in the stands are not forgetting about. I mean, we're going out, everyone was saying 24. So,
well, when we were waiting, and Maureen was asking, should we just go home and get started on the notes? And I said, well, the win streak's on the line. We'll see some other players in there. We'll wait until they get in and kneel down, and then we have pretty easy egress from the stadium from where he sits. So it was really fun to be there to watch Anthony Brown get the big run to get one first down and then to get the quarterback sneak to get the next one. It was very nice to see that.
Yep.
Let's talk defensive MVPs. 3, 2, 1. You have your set?
I do.
Who's your number 3 guy?
All right. There we go. Number 3 for me was Darius Washington.
Great pick. Honorable mention for me. We've talked about him a little bit. Reasoning for having him ahead of other people?
Well, honestly, it's because I had an inside view of who your 3 were, and I wanted to pick not everyone different, but I definitely wanted to include him. I thought he was right up there.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's anything wrong with that play. I have Phillips as my number 3 guy. Boy, the guy's playing probably the best football of his life right now, and still may not be making the roster. It's not a sure thing. He's just played so well, though. It's going to be very hard for them to cut him. It is going to be very hard, and there is a lot of good tape out on there. He is a player I think would be right at the top of available inside linebackers / special teams players that other teams would look at to try and get league-wide.
Yeah, definitely agree. My next player, Malik Ham. Actually, I would say for him and Ardarius, the reason they made the field for me is because these are 2 positions that the Ravens are currently looking for answers. You know, the inside linebacker, defensive tackle, we're not necessarily looking for answers, but slot corner and Sam is a topic on everyone's mind right now. And these 2 players provided a glimpse of potential answering that question in our search for a Sam. So, well, at least for Malik Ham, for our search for a Sam. So that's what I kind of liked about them as MVP.
A good choice. Malik Ham, honorable mention to me, and he certainly showed out extremely well. Great to see a Baltimore kid who has a chance to make the roster. And I think at the very least, he's got a chance to be at the top of the outside linebacker group on the practice squad. So that'll be exciting. But my number 2 pick was as easy a slam dunk. And I could have made this guy number 1, honestly. And the reason being that his performance is the one from this game that could really change scheme for the 2023 Ravens. And that's Travis Jones. I think it should be all about, if you're Mike McDonald, really testing out these next 2 games. What do you have with Travis Jones in terms of practice this week? Can you get him up against some of the Washington top interior linemen? See if you can get him good individual matchups, good one-on-one matchups, which will allow him to win. And Jones was just remarkable in that way. And I think, this greatly increases the chance they'll go to 1 and 3 with him at 3 for some plays with Pierce. And I just think, of things that could happen, Worley's play was higher leverage and a bigger deal. And I think we both had him as the MVP, but Travis Jones, in terms of what it means for the 23 Ravens, huge deal.
Astute. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point, that of all these performances, like you said, this is going to be the one that might change the way.
We just lost Alex there for a second, so I'll keep going. We both had Worley at number 1, and that's not surprising, I don't think, to anyone. Worley, an absolutely outrageously good game, and one that I've never seen anything like it in the preseason. But I think there's reason to believe that the difference in experience was a big deal in terms of deriving that value. Alec, I'll just tell you, it's been a wonderful time talking with you about that. We're done with the MVPs. We're done with this episode. We ran a little long on this one, but we hope you guys enjoy the discussion because there's certainly some interesting players involved. Please check out Alec. He's at One Winning Pod on Twitter. He's also the One Winning Pod is out there with him and 2 friends, Peter Kokoros and Chris Rayborg. I've been on their show occasionally. It's fun and entertaining, and I think you'll like it if you want to give that a chance. Other folks out there, if you'd like to join a Film Study Short, please do so. DM me on Twitter. They're always open, and I will get back to you very quickly. We'll talk about the kernel of an episode if you've got an idea for one, and how we could turn that into a nice, engaging discussion, which is really what we're looking for on this show. I'll just say goodbye for Alec here. Thanks again for coming on, and we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.